So, here's the thing about Little Women. I hear such mixed things about this classic. I hear people say it's their favourite classic of all time, and then I hear people say it's boring as heck. And I am here today to investigate.
So I decided to go and investigate it.
Today I'm going to be taking you along with me as I try to find out, is Little Women an amazing classic or is it overrated? I'm interested to see where I fall on the scale. I've been in my classics era a little bit, you know, I love a good Janie, I love Jane Austen, and I've been getting more and more into classics, so I'm super duper excited to read this and see what I think of it. I love the film, I love the 29 film with Florence Pugh, Saoirse Ronan, Timothée Chalamet. I love that film. I love it. So I do know the story. I actually saw that film in cinema with my friend and immediately walked down to the Waterstones by the cinema and bought this copy. So I've had it since 2020. I think I saw it at the start of 2020. And it's time for me to read it and see where I fall. So come with me as we read this book. I'm very excited too. And yeah, let's investigate. Is this classic overrated or is it amazing? Let's see. Okay, I am barely any of the way through Little Women. I'm 10% really of the way through, but I wanted to check in with you because I have thoughts already. So I don't think we need to get really into the plot of Little Women in this video. I feel like most of you probably know what the plot is. We're following four sisters. When we meet them, they're quite young. I think this book spans about 20 years in total. I am reading, my edition, like most editions, does have Little Women and Good Wives, which is like the second part or second book, basically. They were published as different books, but most modern editions combine them. Anyway, you're following these four sisters, you're following their lives. When we open up, their dad is away at war. I think he's like a pastor or minister at war or something like that. And we're following their lives and what they're up to. And it's very interesting. I read the foreword of this, which sometimes I don't do in classics because they kind of spoil the book. They just assume you know the plot. But I read the foreword and I think it gave me an interesting lens to read the book through. And like, I'll probably get more into this when I have more thoughts specifically on elements that it kind of raised, but there's a lot to do with Louisa May Alcott and the perspective that she's writing from that I think is very, very interesting and is kind of like, you know, colouring or giving me an interesting lens to read the book through. In the first 50 pages, I'm finding this quite pleasant. I'm quite enjoying it. It's very small. It's very quiet. You know, you're just following these girls as they kind of like learn lessons through life, basically. Louisa May Alcott, for a bit of context, was tasked with writing a book for young girls, for young women to read, as like kind of like an instructional book for women to read, because men were supposed to read stuff that made them clever and women were supposed to read stuff that made them good wives, basically.
Man.
But interestingly, before that, she'd written like a lot of subversive, kind of like dramatic, very sexual stuff. But the publisher came to her and said, "We want you to write this book," and so she's written it. So that's an interesting lens to view it through, right? Like, she didn't come up necessarily with the idea to write this book. It's just a job, you know. She just got to write this book. She thought, okay, I'll kind of base it on my family. There's a lot of characters in this who have parallels to her life, but I'm not minding the kind of quiet little lessons of them learning. That might start to grate. I could see it might get annoying, but for now, I'm just finding it quite sweet and quite quiet. I mean, I would actually view this as YA. I've put it as YA in my spreadsheet, and like, it doesn't have to be like the greatest literary kind of like masterpiece for adults to read. I think viewing it through the lens of this being written for young girls is an interesting lens to view it through, and I'm just finding it quite comforting, you know, like the old timiness of it, the historical nature of it, I'm quite enjoying, and I really do enjoy the characters of the four sisters. I mean, it's not having to do maybe as much heavy lifting because I am picturing the actresses from the 2019 version in my head, and I do know their characters from that. And so I guess with a classic that you know the story so well from something else, there is an element of that, of like, you know, you just kind of sink into the book because you know the story, you know the characters, and it's just really more interesting seeing them from the original perspective. Like, oh, okay, that's how you were originally written, and that's how then they decided to adapt you, and like seeing the similarities and differences in that is interesting. But yeah, I'm finding it quite a pleasant book. I don't know, I'm gonna go away and read hopefully a bigger chunk, but I just wanted to let you know that like my initial feelings toward this are that I'm quite enjoying it. So there we have it. I quickly, as an interlude, want to put in some footage from me and my family this weekend went on an alpaca walk. And I wasn't like actively working on a vlog at a time. It was after I finished my last one and before I started this one. But I filmed a lot of it and I thought I'd show it to you because although I don't know if Little Women were ever walking alpacas in nature, we had a lot of fun. It's a little farm that has alpacas and pygmy goats and they've had them for 20 years and it's a very lovely, lovely place and we really enjoyed our time there. So yeah, I'll throw in some clips of me walking an alpaca. Ours is called Smokey. Very cute, and Bestie Opal. Smokey and Opal are like that and refuse to be separated in a line. They're very funny creatures, alpacas. Anyways, I'll throw in those clips because they're kind of quaint farm life, a little bit like Little Women, I guess. And I'm going to go away and read some more, and I'll let you know when I have some more thoughts. About 200 pages into Little Women, and I don't have a ton more thoughts. I feel like my opinions have kind of stayed the same in that I'm finding it very pleasant. I am leaning towards not overrated right now. I think it's a very interesting book. I think, you know, like I said, she'd been told to write this book for young girls to read and to give them lessons about life, and there is those elements to it. But it feels like she's giving you a little nudge, nudge, wink, wink of like, you know, what more you can be beyond the societal expectations at the time. And like, I feel like she's giving the lessons that the publisher wanted for good girls, what good girls should do, but then also taking it further and kind of like behind the publisher's back, showing like, well, here's something else, you know what I mean?
'Cause I'm an international super spy. Super spy!
You know, if you think about it, I'd say Meg and Beth are like the ideal girl, you know what I mean? Like, they are what society at the time wanted them to be. And I mean ideal in terms of like societal expectations. But arguably, the two sisters that make up a bigger part of the plot that you spend more time with are Jo and Amy. And they both have a lot of flaws. And, well, what would be viewed as flaws. But I don't think Louisa May Alcott necessarily views them as flaws, you know? Like, Beth is angelic and just so giving and wonderful, but like, Jo and Amy, their quirks, the parts of their personality that maybe society don't love, are viewed as lovable in this book. And I think that's a very interesting choice. And I think it's interesting this was published at the time it was. And it feels a little bit ahead of its time, a little bit modern. Plot-wise, should I give spoilers for Little Women? I don't know what people know. I assume most people know the plot. But I feel like we're approaching the end of them as young girls. And I feel like we're approaching part 2. Where is part 2 page-wise? Does anything tell me? Page 236. 26. So yeah, we're getting close to it. I'm interested to see how things change because they were published as 2 separate books, and thus I feel like Louise May Alcott had more time to like reflect maybe on what part 1 said and what she wanted part 2 to say differently. So I'm interested to see how they differ or what kind of is expanded upon in part 2. I think she makes a lot of interesting choices in part 2, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the writing, but I do feel like some of my enjoyment comes from loving the film so much and imagining the scenes in the film. Like every time we have a scene, I'm basically imagining what the corresponding scene in the film is. So I do think that is contributing to my enjoyment, I will say. Quickly, I do have a parcel to open. I feel like in every video at the moment, I'm opening a parcel from you guys, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. You don't need to do this, but I very much appreciate it. So let's see what it is. It's from Esty. I know you're... Everyone says this now, but every night. I know you're reading down your TBR, so I decided to give you the first book in a 60+ book series. You're welcome. Honestly though, this is my fave mystery series of all time. We have got J.D. Robb, Naked in Death. So this is Nora Roberts, if you don't know. J.D. Robb is the pseudonym? Pen name for Nora Roberts, and this is like a mystery, I think with a romance element, but a mystery series that she writes, and Naked in Death is the first one. Esty, thank you so much. Yeah, at the back it's got 52 books, but I feel like there's more since then. So this is very, very, very exciting. I've wanted to start this for so long. I know Mara from Books Like Woe has like read the whole series, and I aspire to read everything that Mara reads because I love everything that Mara loves. So thank you so much, Esty. That is so, so, so kind. That's very exciting. Wowie. Maybe this could be a new palette cleanser series to me once Lady Hardcastle is... But it's not ending. I'm caught up. I'm going to be caught up in 1 book's time. Thank you so much, Esty. Okay. Oh, we're going to do something fun now. 1 sec. Let me move the camera so we get some variety. I couldn't move that far because my camera battery is actually dead, and so I had to... It's still plugged in. But anyways, I thought it'd be fun for us to do a quiz to find out which March sister I am. If I had to guess, I would guess my namesake Meg, because I think I have that like oldest sister energy that she does. I don't have like the boisterousness and like grabbing life by the balls that Jo has. I don't have like the kind of meekness, not in a bad way, but like servitude for others, I think, that Beth has. And I'm not like the baby of the family like Amy, you know what I mean? So if I had to guess, I think it's gonna say Meg.
It's almost time for Meg to serve.
But shall we see? I don't know if we'll do one of these or if we'll do a few for, you know, quality control. Let's go with the BuzzFeed quiz, shall we? Pick a book. Pride and Prejudice. Absolutely. Pride and Prejudice. BuzzFeed quiz is always the fun version. Like, what talent would you choose if you could? I'm gonna go with writing. How would your friends describe you? Stylish, shy, determined, kind. I don't know.
I just think she's very delusional and maybe possibly insane.
I would hope kind. Should I say kind? Or determined? I'm quite determined. I'm gonna say kind. Hopefully. I don't know. If you could have one wish for yourself, it would be money, love, endless childhood, success. I mean, you want a bit of all of them, don't you? I don't know. I'm gonna go with love. In all forms. Choose a man from Little Women. I'm gonna go with Laurie. You gotta love him. I think everyone probably does. Oh no, not the professor. Choose an animal, cat. Absolutely. Most importantly, oh, spoilers. Look away. Look away if you don't want to get spoilt. Do you think Amy should have ended up with Laurie? Okay, I need to read the book to see how I feel about it. I am in 2 minds about this. We'll discuss this once I've read it. I'm gonna say probably not, but I'm not bothered by it, which I know is like sitting on the fence. We'll talk more about it once we've read it. Who am I? I'm Meg March. What can I say? I'm named after her. I'm not named after her. You are motherly and kind. Many come for you for a dose of caring but logical advice. It seems as though you always know exactly what to say. Practicality isn't all you're about, though. You're stylish, elegant, and know how to have a good time. Thank you. Let's do one more and see. PBS? I don't know. In the family unit, it might be considered the mini adult. Choose a quote. I think that's some weak quotes, guys. You could have picked some better ones. Let's be able to go down. I don't want to go, and I do. Maybe that because I'm a bit indecisive sometimes. Choose something to make you happy right now. A cat. You just got some extra money on your tax returns. I'd probably go shopping for clothes. Choose a vacation. I do love a Europe tour. Choose a flower. I'm going for that nice bouquet. At a party, you can be found deep in psychological conversation. I don't know. Your New Year's resolution concerns, oh my gosh, self-confidence. Choose a colour. I'm going for that green. Meg March. What can I say?
Yep, that's me.
Sometimes get derailed by reckless splurges. Thing about me is I don't spend money because once I start spending money, I can't stop. So I actually never buy clothes because once I start buying clothes, I want to buy like £1,000 worth. Anyways, that was a fun little break, little excerpt. I am now going to go read this afternoon, so hopefully I'll have another check-in with you today. But yeah, I'm finding Little Women a very pleasant read. Hello friends, I'm about to pop out to see some family, so we're gonna make it quick, but I am about 350 pages in, so about 150 pages from the end. I'm still enjoying it, still finding it pleasant. For me, I think what is most interesting about reading this is thinking about the wider historical significance and significance of Louisa May Alcott's life behind a lot of what is happening here. And I think we see a lot of that in Jo. You know, there's that quote that Louisa May Alcott gave. What is it? Now I'm more than half persuaded that I am a man's soul put by some freak of nature into a woman's body. And I think there's been a lot of debate over that, and this isn't me trying to like speculate about someone's sexuality who's dead or whatever, but I think it's interesting from a historical perspective. How would someone feeling those feelings express them? And there's been debate, because I think after that she talks about like loving many women, so there's debate over whether she was maybe queer, like a lesbian, and thought that only men could love women and that's why she thought she was a man in a woman's body, or if it's more maybe like non-binary or trans feelings that she's expressing there. And Jo is very much Louisa May Alcott self-insert, right? And I think we see a lot of that in Jo, in her character, like elements of boyishness and wanting to be a boy and cutting her hair off, and the way she wishes she could live in society, and the way she wishes she could move through the world. And I just think it's interesting seeing those parallels, because there are a lot of parallels in this to Louisa May Alcott's life. Her father and the father in the March Sisters is very, very similar. Spoilers, I'm going to get into some spoilers in the last part of this, because I want to discuss aspects of the book. She had a sister who died very young, similar to Beth. And so a lot of this is almost semi-autobiographical. And I just think there is a lot, like, I'm having fun reading this, but I almost want to go away and read other literature about some of these topics, about Jo's gender identity and gender expression in this book, because I think there are moments where it does feel like she's maybe doesn't feel like she fits society's expectation of a woman and all those gender conformities. She doesn't fulfill all of them. She doesn't feel comfortable in that identity. And so that is what I think is interesting. I almost want to go away, and we'll get on to the whole, I very much want to read opinions about the whole Jo and Laurie and Amy of it all. We're not there yet, but I think there's a lot of interesting discussions around that. So it's more like, as much as I'm enjoying this, I more want to go read other like literature or like retellings that reimagine the book in a different way. I own So Many Beginnings by Bethany C. Morrow, and I really want to get to that because that's a whole nother like interesting examination of the book. So yeah, I'm very much enjoying it. But like I said, I think it's interesting seeing aspects of Louisa May Alcott that she puts herself in Jo, and like I don't think we should like speculate on someone's sexuality, but I think her having written, you know, expressed those feelings, it's interesting to see how they're manifested in Jo as a character. So anyways, I'm gonna go read the rest of this in the car on the way to and from visiting family. I'll let you know my thoughts either tonight or in the morning, but I'm excited to finish it off. Okay, I'm ending my experience with Little Women in a very interesting place where I'm giving this a 3.5 overall, and I can really understand the people who give this 5 stars and say it's their favourite classic of all time and it's nostalgic to them and they love it so much, and I can also completely understand people who found it boring. That's where I'm ending up. I have a lot of the same thoughts. It is a pretty pleasant read. I prefer part 1, which seemingly from I had the book club live for this with my patrons last night. They all prefer part 2, but I preferred part 1. I think part 1 is like the core of the story, and then she does make some interesting choices in part 2. Particularly, I do want to discuss, and again, spoilers, should Joe and Laurie have ended up together? Should Amy and Laurie have ended up together? Should Joe have gotten married? Because I have thoughts on that. That is something I do have thoughts and opinions on. When I watched the film for the first time, I was so team Joe and Laurie. Like, I was so completely and utterly team Joe and Laurie.
Yes, my team. The dream team.
I cried in the scene and he's like, I would be a perfect saint, Joe. Like, be a perfect saint. I cried every time I watched that scene when I watched the film. I was so complete Joe and Laurie. But then I read this book. And I think the movie portrays it a slightly different way, but at the book, you understand they would not work well together. You understand they bicker, they fight like brother and sister. They have, like, I was saying on the Patreon live stream, I think they are soulmates. I think they are platonic soulmates. I think they have more chemistry than Amy and Laurie, and we'll get onto that in a second, but I do think Amy and Laurie are a better fit for one another as romantic partners. But I think Joe and Laurie are, like, cosmically united soulmates, but they just shouldn't be together. Okay, so then I kind of became of the opinion, well then, Joe shouldn't marry anyone. It's a bit of a cop-out that she marries Joe off, and I think that it's just because of what society wanted at the time, what the publishers probably wanted. You have to marry all the girls off, and Joe should not have gotten married. Joe should have been living her free life, you know, writing her stories, and she shouldn't have gotten married. But then I read this book, and I read her taking care of Beth when Beth dies, which is kind of like a bit of a... I'm not sure how I felt about Beth dying was written in this. My thoughts aren't fully formed in that one, but I'm like, that was kind of quick and kind of glossed over a little bit. I read Joe caring for Beth and all that she goes through in caring for Beth and losing Beth and how lonely she feels after that and how much she realizes, I do want that kind of love. And I thought, you know what? I want someone to come and take care of Joe. I want Joe to be able to lean into her softer side, because she does have those two sides to her, that kind of like boisterous side and then this softer side. And I think the world and all that she'd been through had made her like have to be tough in some circumstances, and I thought, you know what, yeah, I want someone to come and take care of her and love her and like I'll enable her to take a step back a little bit, you know. And so I am pro Joe getting married at the end.
Hello, Jack. I changed my mind.
I am pro Joe getting married at the end. And I have another opinion. Amy and Laurie, here's the thing. I think that Amy and Laurie personality-wise are a better fit. I think they fit each other quite well personality-wise. I do think the book is insta-lovey, and it's just like, Laurie's like, oh, all my affection just went to Amy. It just transferred to Amy. And it just, a little bit side-eye at that. And how in the movie, she gives him a good talking to, which I think is needed. Like, I've been second to Joe my entire life. I will not be in this circumstance, especially when I've loved you my entire life. Whereas in this, she's like, yes, Laurie, I'll marry you. I'll marry you. And also reading the book, it got me thinking about, and this is an attitude that would be weird today, but I think made sense at the time. I feel like for me in the book, Laurie seemed an even bigger part of the family than he did in the film. He seemed so much more entrenched in the family. You know, his happiness in life was really down to their love and their protection and their care for him. And so I think it makes sense for him to marry one of the sisters. I think it makes sense. So he can kind of stay in the family in a way he wouldn't have been able to if he married someone else. Like, his new wife would be like, who the fuck are these people? You know? Whereas marrying into the family enables him to live in that family for the rest of his life, which I think is something he needs as a character. And thus marrying Amy makes sense. So that's all my opinions on that regard. I'd love to know your thoughts, but that was my kind of big opinion in this last part. Not necessarily anything about the writing, but everything I've said previously still stands. I found it pleasant. I found thinking about the deeper messaging to some parts. Some things seemed really modern in their attitudes to me, and I appreciate that Louisa May Alcott was writing this to girls at that time. You know, I said in the live show, I feel like the lessons that this book has, when the old men publishing the book read it, they'd be like, yes, these are good things to teach young girls. But when young girls read it, they would have taken away different meanings from some of this, that the old men wouldn't understand about how it's okay to live beyond what society expects me and have these bigger dreams and all these things. So yes, that is Little Women. So I simultaneously don't think it's overrated, but also understand why people don't like it, which pleases everyone and pleases nobody, I guess, in the end there. But I'd love to know your thoughts on Little Women if you have read Little Women. I'd love to know your opinions down below. And thank you so much for watching this vlog. I've got some super fun videos coming in the next couple weeks, so keep your eyes out for them. And I love you so much, and I'll see you very soon in another one. Bye!